Au nom d'École Design, je voulais vous souhaiter la bienvenue à cette conférence Ping Pong. Si vous n'êtes pas familier ou familière avec la formule, en fait, c'est une série de conférences, on est dans la deuxième année de cette série-là, où on invite des diplômés de l'École de design à venir vous rencontrer pour nous parler un peu de leur parcours et de leur pratique. Et on les invite aussi à leur tour à inviter quelqu'un qui les admire, que eux admirent, pardon, pour avoir une discussion avec eux. Donc, avant de présenter l'invité de ce soir, je voulais vous donner peut-être quelques petites données techniques. Donc, la conférence de ce soir va être enregistrée. Si vous avez des questions, je vous invite à les mettre dans le conversé et on va les colliger pendant la conférence et on pourra les relayer à Raphaël et à son invité vers la fin de la conférence. Donc, je vous inviterai à garder vos caméras et les micros fermés, s'il vous plaît, pendant la durée de la présentation. Donc, voilà, la présentation de ce soir la première partie va être en français. Et après, on va avoir un entretien avec, Raphaël va avoir un entretien avec son invité que je vais lui laisser le privilège de présenter en anglais. So this evening, the first part of the conference will be given in French and then followed by a discussion in English. At the end, we can take questions either in French or in English. As you see, we'll relay those questions towards the end. Si je retourne en français, donc notre invité aujourd'hui qui inaugure la saison 2021-2022 est Raphaël Daudelin. Raphaël Daudelin est un diplômé de l'École. En 1999, il a créé avec Anouk Penel le Studio Feed, que vous connaissez probablement déjà. Sinon, je vous encourage à découvrir leur travail. Il se situe beaucoup dans le domaine de l'édition et de l'image de marque. Entre autres avec des projets comme Air Inuit qui ont vraiment fait un peu la réputation du bureau à travers le monde. Alors, c'est vraiment un beau privilège de recevoir Raphaël ce soir. Comme professeur à l'École de design, j'ai eu la chance, Raphaël a souvent accepté de venir dans des critiques de différents projets avec les étudiants et j'ai toujours été... Quand il acceptait de venir en présentation, c'était vraiment un beau cadeau parce que peu importe le domaine d'expertise qui était présenté, des fois, moi, je l'invitais dans des cours de design d'exposition. Ce n'est pas nécessairement ce qu'il fait au quotidien. Il y avait toujours la capacité de comprendre les enjeux puis de donner des pistes aux étudiants qui étaient productives et inspirantes. Alors, je peux seulement m'imaginer commencer de l'avoir comme collaborateur pour des projets, ça doit être vraiment un beau privilège. Donc, Raphaël, je t'inviterai à te joindre à moi et à réactiver ton micro. Bonjour.
Bonjour.
Alors, je te laisse la parole. Je pense que on se revoit vers la fin. Je vous ferai signe quand vous voudriez répondre à des questions à la fin. Merci, Raphaël.
C'est bon. D'abord, merci Louis-Charles de m'avoir invité. Je voudrais surtout aussi remercier mon invité, mais que je vais vous dévoiler tantôt d'avoir accepté mon invitation. Puis je commencerai en fait en disant, si j'avais à faire une très, très courte histoire de la fondation du studio, évidemment, c'est quelque chose qui me ramène à mes années à l'UQAM, au moment où Anouk et moi nous sommes rencontrés. En fait, parce qu'on avait tous les deux cet intérêt-là commun pour la typographie et l'imprimé, à une époque où, en fait, tout le monde était en train de prendre un virage web. Puis, il y a autre chose. En fait, rapidement, après notre rencontre, on s'est rendu compte qu'on avait un autre intérêt commun qui était la musique. Parce qu'assez rapidement, après cette rencontre-là, on s'est mis à se croiser dans un paquet de shows de noise qui avaient lieu dans des salles obscures, dans des lofts un peu partout en ville. Puis j'en parle de ce détail-là qui peut sembler anecdotique, mais qui me semble pertinent parce que, en fait, aujourd'hui, j'ai un peu envie de parler de comment est-ce que je trouve ça enrichissant dans notre métier de designer d'avoir des intérêts autres que celui du design. Donc, à ce moment-là, en 99, notre collaboration, c'est quelque chose qui a démarré un peu comme, je dirais, comme une job d'été, en fait. je m'étais fait proposer un petit projet d'identité d'une compagnie de production de films. J'ai proposé à Anouk de le faire avec moi. Et puis, ce qui est arrivé cet été-là, c'est que les projets se sont enchaînés les uns après les autres. Puis, sans vraiment s'en rendre compte, on était rendu à l'automne. La session d'automne recommençait. Puis, en fait, il y a quelque chose qui venait de démarrer comme ça, sans vraiment que ça ait été réfléchi. Pour vous donner un ordre de grandeur, un peu plus que 20 ans plus tard, le studio aujourd'hui, c'est une équipe de 6 personnes. Donc, c'est Anouk et moi, forcément, avec Léon Lowe, qui est avec nous depuis presque 10 ans aujourd'hui. En fait, plus que 10 ans, je dirais. Catherine Sabourin, qui a joint l'équipe, qui a terminé ses cours à l'UQAM en 2019, donc qui a joint l'équipe à ce moment-là. Et puis, par la suite, il y a eu l'arrivée de Romain Grucker, qui a quitté son boulot chez Porchès Typofonderie à Paris pour venir se joindre à nous en mars 2020, juste avant une pandémie. Et puis, plus récemment, dans le fond, il y a Margot Lepage qui a fini cette année, qui est venue faire un stage chez nous, puis là, qui continue à travailler avec nous. Donc, si j'avais à décrire peut-être un peu plus précisément ce qu'on fait au studio, Louis-Charles l'a, je pense, bien expliqué. Je dirais que notre travail se divise selon 2 grands champs d'expertise. Le premier, puis qui est quelque chose qu'on a intégré assez rapidement dans notre boulot, Anouk et moi, c'est effectivement le design de livres. Puis ensuite est arrivé un peu plus tard le travail d'identité de marque. Puis si on revient à notre intérêt commun, à Anouk et moi, là, qui a fait qu'on s'est vraiment retrouvés, qui est la typographie, ce que je trouve qui est intéressant entre ces 2 champs d'expertise-là, qui peuvent paraître assez éloignés l'un de l'autre, en fait, c'est que le travail du livre nous a vraiment forgé l'œil puis la main dans ce que j'appellerais le travail de composition, qui est probablement le travail qu'on associe au métier traditionnel de typographe. Alors que les mandats d'identité, eux, nous ont forgé l'œil et la main dans le dessin de caractère. Et évidemment, à ce moment-là, à une échelle où on n'avait pas nécessairement à développer des polices complètes. Mais tout ça pour dire qu'il y a eu des projets de police qui se travaillaient en parallèle. Et c'est ce qui a fait qu'en 2013, on a lancé une première police qui a été distribuée à ce moment-là par le Bureau des affaires typographiques à Paris, qui a été aujourd'hui, disons, avalée par Production Type. Puis éventuellement, en 2017, on a lancé Feed Type, qui est en quelque sorte notre propre fonderie de caractères typographiques. Donc, si je reviens à ces 2 champs-là d'expertise, je pense que l'autre point commun qu'ils partagent, puis qui, à mon avis, est encore plus important aujourd'hui, c'est une certaine idée de la narration. Puis, dans ce sens-là, je trouve que ça vient même boucler la boucle avec l'idée de la typographie, parce que la typographie, c'est un des quelques véhicules que je connais là, qui sert à raconter des choses, l'autre étant probablement l'oral. Donc, si on s'arrête à la notion de narration dans le livre, a priori, on peut penser que c'est une évidence parce que si on prend un livre comme un roman, par exemple, c'est un livre qu'on prend de la page 1 ou de la première jusqu'à la dernière page, puis une fois qu'on a terminé, on vient d'assister à une histoire. Par contre, généralement, je dirais que les livres sur lesquels on travaille ne sont pas des livres qui ont des structures aussi linéaires que ça. Genre, au contraire, c'est des livres avec des structures des fois plus complexes, des fois moins définies. Puis si je prends, par exemple, un livre plus de la nature d'un catalogue d'exposition, par exemple, c'est un livre, ce sont des livres dans lesquels il y a plusieurs acteurs qui sont impliqués. Généralement, on va retrouver un directeur de publication, on va retrouver un ou plusieurs commissaires, on va retrouver un ou plusieurs artistes, peut-être des auteurs invités. Puis je trouve que d'une certaine façon, tous ces gens-là racontent à leur façon un petit bout d'histoire. Et puis, je trouve que notre métier comme designer, avant de se mettre à faire un travail de mise en page, je pense que notre métier de designer, en fait, c'est d'abord et avant tout de trouver le fil conducteur qui va faire en sorte que l'enchaînement de tous ces petits bouts d'histoire-là, une fois rassemblés, devienne quelque chose de plus grand. Donc, c'est tout de suite une espèce de réflexion autour de la structure et forcément d'une certaine idée de la narration. L'autre portion que je trouve qui est vraiment importante dans ce travail-là, c'est un rapport, puis qui est généralement très, très intimement lié à la structure, c'est le rapport à la matérialité, c'est-à-dire comment le sujet d'un livre et sa structure vont éventuellement avoir une incidence sur la nature de l'objet. Que ce soit son format, le type ou les types de papier, la couverture, le type de reliure, les types de finition. Je considère tous ces détails-là au même titre que la mise en page, que éventuellement de la DA photo ou ILU s'il y a lieu, comme un paquet de petites couches de narration qui s'additionnent les unes aux autres pour créer un livre qui va être un tout cohérent. Ensuite, si on s'attarde à la notion de narration à travers les projets d'identité, je dirais que c'est complètement une autre chose. C'est-à-dire que, contrairement à un projet de livre où on se fait fournir une certaine matière première, là, disons les textes et possiblement des images, dans un projet d'identité, on se fait fournir un brief. Puis un brief, je trouve que c'est important de le dire, mais c'est comme toujours incomplet, voire même biaisé. Pourquoi? Parce que généralement, un brief présente, en tout cas souvent, seulement la perception qu'a le client de son entreprise ou son organisme, peu importe. Puis deux, parce que souvent, au lieu d'exprimer clairement des problématiques puis des objectifs, les clients essaient déjà de trouver des solutions à notre place, alors que c'est exactement pour ça qu'ils nous engagent. Donc, je trouve qu'en général, les projets d'identité commencent presque systématiquement avec une espèce de pas en arrière qui va être suivi par une espèce de recherche très, très exhaustive pour qu'on puisse s'assurer d'avoir la meilleure compréhension possible de ce que font les gens avec qui on travaille, dans quel environnement ils évoluent et puis comment ils se positionnent à travers tout ça. Donc, aujourd'hui, dans les projets d'identité, finalement, on passe notre temps à faire des présentations qui ont, je dirais, différentes fonctions selon les étapes auxquelles on est rendu dans un projet, mais qui servent généralement à démontrer qu'on comprend très bien ce que les gens avec qui on travaille font, leur réalité, leurs problématiques, leurs objectifs, etc., qui vont aussi nous permettre de démontrer notre réflexion qu'on fait autour de leurs enjeux, puis éventuellement qui vont nous permettre de démontrer comment les propositions qu'on met sur la table vont les aider à atteindre leurs objectifs. Puis pour chacune de ces présentations-là, ça demande un travail de structure puis de scénarisation de manière à être certain que ce qu'on souhaite leur dire soit limpide, puis ne puisse pas vraiment être sujet à une double interprétation. Pour que, ultimement, dans le fond, le travail qui va être évalué le soit d'une façon beaucoup plus rationnelle qu'émotive. Puis ça ne veut pas dire que les projets eux-mêmes ne sont pas porteurs d'émotions, mais c'est vraiment l'évaluation qu'on va en faire, qu'on souhaite qu'il soit faite sur une base plus rationnelle. Puis tout ce travail-là, je pense que c'est de la narration, puis c'est raconté. Pourquoi je raconte tout ça? C'est parce que aujourd'hui, je considère que faire du bon design, je pense que c'est avant tout raconter des bonnes histoires. Puis forcément, je ne pensais pas ça en 99 quand j'ai commencé à travailler. Je pense que c'est normal parce qu'il y a beaucoup de choses qu'on fait aujourd'hui que je ne m'imaginais pas vraiment faire en tant que designer à l'époque. Je pense aussi que c'est forcément lié au fait qu'on évolue dans une petite structure, mais que ce soit dans des projets de livres ou des projets d'identité, ou même à la limite des projets qui sortiraient de ces champs d'expertise-là, aujourd'hui, les projets nous amènent vraiment à porter un paquet de chapeaux différents. Que ce soit de faire de la stratégie, que ce soit de la direction de création, de la DA photo, vidéo, que ce soit de la rédaction, de la direction éditoriale, peu importe, là. Pourtant, je ne considère pas que j'ai plusieurs métiers. Puis quand je travaille, je n'ai pas l'impression qu'à un moment donné, j'enlève mon chapeau de designer pour mettre un chapeau de rédacteur. J'ai juste l'impression qu'aujourd'hui, ces tâches-là font partie de mon travail de designer parce que je pense on aborde ce métier-là avec un sens critique. Puis je pense aujourd'hui que ce qui a le plus changé, en fait, dans notre façon d'aborder le travail, ben, c'est dans un certain niveau d'implication qu'on a au sein des projets, puis de leur contenu, en fait. Puis si aujourd'hui, mon métier m'intéresse encore autant, ben, je pense que c'est parce que justement, il nous amène à se faire catapulter dans un univers, en tout cas d'un univers à un autre. Des fois, des univers qu'on connaît, des fois, des univers qu'on ne connaît pas du tout. Puis que, ben, pour les comprendre, on a forcément à passer énormément de temps à faire de la recherche, puis un espèce de travail d'analyse qui va faire que notre travail de création va s'appuyer sur quelque chose de solide. Tout ça pour dire que quand Louis-Charles m'a invité à faire une conférence Ping Pong, mon premier réflexe, ça a été de me dire que finalement, je n'avais pas envie de vous parler de design tant que ça, que j'avais plus envie de vous parler de bouffe. Pourquoi? Ben, parce qu'à part mon métier, je pense que ce qui m'intéresse le plus dans la vie, c'est ça, c'est la bouffe, puis tout ce qui tourne autour. Puis, on pourrait s'imaginer que pour faire le pont avec le design, j'aborderais la bouffe, je sais pas, moi, sur le plan de la créativité, en disant que y a un paquet de chefs qui réclament une espèce de statut d'artiste à cause du travail de création qu'ils font dans leur travail, mais pas du tout, en fait. Je pense que l'angle, moi, par lequel la bouffe et la cuisine m'intéressent vraiment beaucoup, en fait, c'est la connaissance, qu'elle soit historique, technique, scientifique. Il y a quelque chose qui m'intéresse d'en comprendre comment, je sais pas moi, un plat est né, puis comment il a été transformé, comment il a évolué dans le temps, puis comment il est fait d'une manière plutôt qu'une autre. Puis je me rends compte, en fait, que j'aborde probablement la nourriture comme j'aborde mon travail avec énormément de lecture puis énormément de recherche. Ça m'amène à vous présenter mon invité, qui est l'auteur et la conceptrice d'un livre qui s'appelle « The Sausage of the Future », qui s'appelle Carolien Niebling. Et puis, à partir de ce moment-ci, ben, je vais vous montrer un peu à quoi ressemble le livre. À partir de ce moment-ci, je vais passer en anglais pour éventuellement entamer la conversation avec Caroline une fois que je vous aurai rapidement présenté le livre. Je vais prendre une petite gorgée d'eau parce que sinon, je vais... Alors, so I discovered the book in an exhibition organized by Collectif Blanc at the time, and I was immediately struck by the title, The Sausage of the Future, and of course the psychedelic collage on the cover. And of course, I was wondering, what was this book all about? What is the sausage of the future? So as I was flipping through the pages, I was getting more and more excited by a bunch of infographics showing the anatomy of a sausage, as I will show you. And from even more psychedelic collage featuring vegetables into mortadella, insects, some more vegetables, and some other graphics showing cuts of meats, fiber, muscle, directions. So when I was flipping the pages, I just realized that I had in my hands an exhaustive study about how sausage making could change to address sustainability and meat consumption issues by preaching for dietary diversity. So I'll continue flipping through the pages to give you an idea of everything that is covered within the book. So here we can see the process of mincing and filling the sausage into casings, how the process of linking works, different graphics about different types of sausage, be it fermented sausages, fresh sausages, dried sausages, cooked sausage, blood sausage. Until, I won't flip the pages, all the pages, but there's also a really complete protein chart, which is really, really interesting. And eventually, if I go at the end of the book, we arrived at the results in which there's a bunch of really, really nice pictures of unusual sausages that were developed by Carolien and her butcher friends. So we can have a look at them right here. Sausages, some sausages that involve meat in the making, some other sausages that are only made with vegetables. Here we have a fruit salami, liver and berry, which is, well, to me, this one is really, really beautiful. So basically, this is the book that I was completely struck by. And I think perhaps now it's time to introduce Carolien Niebling, the author of The Sausage of the Future. Hi, Carolien. So yeah, one thing that I really like about your book is how, in a way, you basically you go back to what makes a sausage, which is a casing and stuffing. And well, to quote my friend Bartek, who in a short funny film he made where a vegan is healed by a doctor through what is called a sausage therapy. The doctor says, you must embrace the eating of animals by stuffing one into its own intestine, which is something that, well, I mean, actually, you're kind of proposing something else, right?
But it started there.
Yeah.
And the thing is, what is so interesting about a sausage is it became, or it came out of a fish and butchery, because back in the time, over 5,000 years ago, when the sausage was invented, which you have to sink in a little bit, like 5,000 years ago, that's when the first sausage came about. And it was stuffing intestines with particles that were left over from the drying of the meat. And yeah, that's what you did.
I was wondering, I mean, how exactly the project started, or what was your relationship with food before developing the book?
Yeah, so I studied École, which is a design and I was approaching my diploma project, and I was thinking, like, I need to do something meaningful, and I wanted to do something meaningful, and I just didn't feel like doing anything. Food has always been a passion of mine, so it was going in that direction. But I thought, yeah, a plate set or like something about etiquettes and things, or insect eating. Like, I didn't feel it was really meaningful. And then I read about meat consumption, and the difficulty for people to change, because meat consumption needs to go down. It's one thing, but the way we're gonna do it is another thing that can have like 1,000 different approaches. What's been done is shaming the existing industry and creating a new industry side by side, creating almost the same type of objects, burgers and sausages, made from different materials. And I thought, why don't I help the people that make the sausages into putting other things in their sausages so they can evolve their profession, and we don't need an additional industry. So that's how it started.
And have you ever made sausages before working on a book?
Nope. Have I made them since? Yep. A lot.
But you said something that really interests me when you talk about working on a meaningful project, and it's like if lately at the studio, I mean, I've been questioning myself about what kind of project I want to work on, and I would actually come to the same conclusion. I mean, I want to work on meaningful projects. I don't want to be part of like selling things that I don't believe in, and I think that this meaningful aspect of our work is something really important, actually. I mean, I'm a designer with a strong interest in food, and I do work with some people in the food industry and people I share the same values with, which is something I really enjoy. But I'm really wondering how you decided to merge design, food, and the science related to food to create this practice that is yours and that is really unique.
Yeah, I mean, my fascination for food is one thing, but this really came from trying to find my niche as a designer. Because as soon as I started working on a sausage project, I realized that there is so much to do in the world of food. There's so many things we need to educate consumers on, and you need to help industries improving. And food is changing so rapidly, and we get different, every year there's new trends, every year there's new recommendations on what you should eat, what you should not eat. But there's no designers helping the industry to change and to cope with these changes. And I really felt that there's huge, like a Grand Canyon of a niche for designers to work in this field.
Mm-hmm. So besides the sausage of the future, what types of projects are you working on?
Oh, I do many things. I do a lot of teaching on different schools. Last one was MIT in Boston. So there were like completely different types of students than just design students. But also I do events. I did a very high-end Zoom celebration thing where we send out boxes with a whole experience. So it was a food experience where you every time where there was a break, you get to experience one element, and it was an oyster leaf with an immersive sound of the sea, or there were we had insects somewhere in there. In every ingredient there was an insect hidden, but there were also real ones. So in the end, people could choose whether or not they were eating insects, but they were eating them anyway. It was a quite a project. I work on 2 books at the moment, 2 follow-up books. I work a lot also with chefs. Funnily, quite a lot of Michelin star chefs that would like to create a menu that is better. So they're eating better. So we focus on reducing waste, but then maintaining like a super high quality of food. So many different things, really nice.
But it's funny when you're talking about this really high-end dinner that you worked on, because I mean, I've assisted to some events that were trying to combine food and design, or food and art. And most of the time, I mean, I would be so curious to assist one of yours, because most of the time when I assisted to these kind of events, I was always disappointed for different reasons. One, I remember it was an artist at a contemporary art museum having like this huge installation. It was like a huge banquet table. It was beautiful. But then the way people were asked to interact with it was, to me, it was totally nonsense. Because obviously no one was there to help to serve the food. And it's like, if I remember there was like this pièce montée made out of tongs. There was a little vinaigrette next to it, and no one knew what to do with it. So I took a wooden board on which there was a piece of bread, and I had to take a knife, and I started slicing it really thinly, and then I was serving people around me, and then people thought I was working for the museum. No, I'm part of, and I felt like a waiter at some point, and I was like, I don't know, it was weird, but I think that there's a room for these kind of events if they're organized brilliantly. I think there's something to do out of them.
Yeah, I mean, if I can be really blunt, and it's a little bit in my heritage, when food design, what it is done now, people think they need to design an experience. So they do weird things like eat from your elbow, eat blind,
eat soup with a fork.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is, I never thought, I'm not a food designer. I'm a designer, trained, bachelor, master, but I work with food as a material. But I think logically, like, you're not gonna make a chair with like one half leg, or just for the experience, you know.
But I mean, I consider food or eating as an experience by itself. No one needs to bring these superficial elements, or to try to transform this experience into something that is much more complex. I mean, yeah, that's what I feel.
Yeah, but people, they have their professions. Like, when you're a designer, you're trained as a designer, and you can search for the limits and you can explore them. But experiences are done by amazing restaurants. Like, I have a hobby, which is going to every year one super fancy nice restaurant that I choose for their menu and their style, like Noma or Osteria Francescana, and there you go for the experience. That is something incredible. But that's like hundreds of people working the entire year for one menu.
Yeah.
And then they still base half of the menu on work they did 5 years ago. Like, there's so much development that goes into it. You cannot be a product designer and be like, oh yeah, I'm gonna do that in 2 months.
No, but eating in these places allows you to eat something that you would, of course, never cook yourself. It involves so much work and such a big team to achieve such a menu.
Yeah.
I mean, and this is the experience by itself. But then eating something really simple made out of good ingredients is an example, is an experience as well. Yeah. Oh, are you there?
No, for sure. But I just think. Sorry.
No, it cut it.
Yeah, sorry. But what I think is really important for me to realize is that when I work, for example, with this Michelin star chef, like, he was chef of this restaurant. It's a young guy, super ambitious. And then we look through his menu and I say, what do you want to cook? And he's like, I want to have the style, which is a modern Swiss, a bit like a lot of the guys are doing modern heritage food. But he has a good heritage in the mountains. But then he has finger lime and he has all these ingredients like coconut. And I'm like, maybe you should just purify your concept a little bit more. And I think that's the design thinking that we can bring to, for example, restaurant world.
But in a more concrete way, when you start to work with the chef, what becomes like is land, and what becomes yours, and how did you both connect?
Yeah, basically I ask a lot of questions and I try to find out what they truly want to achieve, and then I help steer it there. But I do everything. Sometimes I say, hey, you need to use less ingredients, or why do you have to peel the cucumber, for example, in a dish? Because with the cucumber, it might taste a lot stronger of cucumber. And there are all these quite French techniques that you have to peel a potato and you take like almost half
specific shape,
but you peel half of the potato off.
Yeah. And you have to make soup to use the leftovers.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I do often.
And well, recently you were selected by Louis Vuitton with 200 other artists/designers to interpret their iconic trunk, which you did with beautiful Romanesco. Can you tell us a bit more about this project?
Yeah, so it's a bit a funny thing because for the book we photographed I think 200 ingredients with a phase 1 camera really up close. And I have these photos and I think they are the most beautiful things ever. So I'm always trying to use them for something. And then when Louis Vuitton asked me like, do something with this, with the trunk that was the first dimensions of the trunk that Louis Vuitton made, I thought, okay, I'm gonna make like this seamless cover of these images. So I spent some time photoshopping them all together. But the idea is just when you decontextualize food, it becomes so beautiful that it's just elevated. So you would eat the chia or the broccoli or the nori or the romanesco that is on there and mushrooms. You just eat it and you think, it's either good or bad. But when you look at it, the way it grows, the romanesco, the way it just...
Yeah, the fractal pattern, the Chartreuse color, it is beautiful.
It's beautiful. So I'm always trying to highlight the beauty of edible things.
So we can say it's like your soup project in which you use your leftovers.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. For Louis Vuitton. No, it's more like people always try to find a deeper meaning behind projects. But sometimes just looking at how beautiful something is, that fitted perfectly with a brand like Louis Vuitton, because it is about beauty.
Yeah. One thing that fascinates me with food and cooking is I think is how it's something anchored in reality and our daily lives. I mean, I'm 45 and I'm still amazed by simple things such as take a bite in a tomato that I grew up in my garden, and because I know it tastes so much better than any tomato I would buy at the supermarket, and I still am going to be amazed by these things for so many years. I'm also fascinated by making a dough that will leave in for a few hours and suddenly it'll be twice as big as it was. What fascinates you the most about food?
Oh, that's too difficult. Oh my God, what fascinates me the most? I understand your fascinations. For me, it must be jellies. It's such an amazing thing that it's very 70s, and actually it's a bit having a comeback now. But I love the way it used to be used as a preservative. So you have like a little layer of jelly over a sandwich, like an open sandwich, to preserve its freshness. Or you have these pâtés that are filled up with a layer just to seal it off from air. And yeah, I just think it's a fascinating thing. And I think if they would if we would focus a little bit more on getting the texture right, it's delicious.
So you do work with jellies right now?
Yeah.
And what are you doing with jellies? That are, well, I mean, are you doing like classical jelly things, or you're going the same way as you're going with the sausages, but with jellies?
Yeah, a little bit. I'm trying to look. I mean, my projects, they come from a fascination that I read something. So I read there are about 1,100 edible seaweeds. And I also read that a seaweed has a gellifying property because it grows. Often it grows in a wavy part of the sea, where it has to be strong enough not to be broken off in the current, or it is growing close to the shore, and when the sea goes down, it needs to maintain enough moisture when the sea water is high up again. It doesn't dry out. So that's why seaweeds have these properties. But I want to find out if there are more than just a regular agar and carrageenan that we know.
Yeah, I mean, the way I used agar or mine, the way jellies are involved in what I'm doing is mostly when I'm trying to clarify a cocktail or like these kind of things, where I put some agar with some juice, and eventually I filter everything, and then I get a clear orange juice, for instance. I think there's another thing that really fascinates me about food is that is the way we learn things by repeating over and over the same gesture. I feel it's almost like there's a body memory in a way, and when I'm saying that, I'm thinking of pizza dough, for instance, where all the recipes are the same. It's water, salt, yeast, and flour in this specific order, and then it's all about the way you manipulate it. And after doing it like hundreds times, well, you get better at it. Do you share the same kind of experience with something that you've been doing so many times, and you got better at it? Or
yeah, cooking in general.
Like,
I think cooking, people say like, oh, I can't cook, but the thing is, nobody can cook when they're born. You just have to do, you start to understand what works together and what doesn't work together. But I start to realize that being able to cook your own food is really a superpower, because there are many people in our generation that just forgot to learn this or never got taught by their parents, and they are just depending on what's out there. It's, for me, that's a bit poverty.
Totally. Are you a more follow the recipe kind of cook, or whatever's in the fridge kind of cook?
Yeah, no, I'm but the thing is, it's funny, like we were talking chefs, so everybody of you probably knows Jamie Oliver, and now everybody knows Yotam Ottolenghi.
Yeah.
And the thing is, Ottolenghi is much more hip and right now, but we should not forget what Jamie Oliver did back then for the home cook. They liberated the home cook from like being a recipe like police. Like you have to have 2.3 grams of salt and 5.2 grams of cumin, and otherwise your recipe will be useless. He introduced cooking with hands. Like you have a hand of this herb and a sprinkle of that, and just taste and season. And he was one of the first that did that. And I mean, he did other things for children's foods in schools, but for the home cook,
Yeah.
he liberated us. We were allowed to cook with our senses, and I think that's really important.
It's funny that you also mentioned Ottolenghi, because I remember at the time, my girlfriend at the time was living in London and I was in Montreal, and I mean, both of us would go back and forth from Montreal to London. And that's when Ottolenghi released his first book. And ever since, I mean, he released so many of them, and he's like such a big superstar. Yeah. I think there's also something that, well, another thing that fascinates me is that relationship with time, and how sometimes a lot of patience is required to achieve something.
Yeah.
In a world where everyone expects things to be immediate. And so whether it's slow cooking something for hours or curing a piece of meat for a week, seasonality, and eventually aging wines and whiskeys for years. And I think that most of the time our patience is rewarded. I was wondering, within all your projects, which one involves the longest waiting time?
Now, you know what's really funny that you say about time? With the sausage book, I gave myself time, because normally projects for designers, they are fast. Like somebody asks you something, and you have to have a first concept in the next few days, and start prototyping in 2 weeks. And with the sausage, I spent 3 years researching, and I went over and over again with the butcher, and we're perfecting the recipes that we did, and also we failed miserably at others, but their time truly made it a much better project than it could have ever been without it.
I think it's
also
when we look at the book, actually, that you spent so much time on it.
Yeah, well, that's really nice of you to say, but also I really think that's why it was such a success, because I had time to think about what I truly wanted to achieve. And so it's funny because I'm from Holland, and Dutch people, they like to provoke, and they like to do things slightly different. And this project does not work in Holland because it's too rational, it's too well thought out. And they're like, oh, you didn't make a sausage from your own blood?
And it doesn't involve a fryer, I guess.
Yeah, true. No, that's really funny. And I was thinking one more thing about time that you said. It's also you can learn a lot from cucina povera, poor man's food. Every country has, except maybe Switzerland, no, they do. But every country has had a poor time. And in that poor time, the most interesting recipes are created out of necessity. And that's often why you cook something for so long, because otherwise it's inedible. Like the meat is disgusting, or these vegetables, they are just they overgrown and they're too big and they're not nice to eat as such. So time is also really a healer for bad ingredients.
Mm. I can't help when you're talking about the cucina povera, I can't help myself by thinking of all the Roman cuisine, which like all the good ingredients were going to the Pope, and then they had to figure out a way to work with the leftovers, and I mean, they made something incredible out of it.
Yeah, and that's why often it takes also longer. So people think, hey, we have no time to spend this much time on your food, but when that's the only thing you can eat, you do it.
It's kind of funny because when I wrote down this question, I thought you might say the book as an answer. Well, it's been like almost 30 minutes that we've been talking. Perhaps I'll ask Louis Charles if some people have questions, I guess.
Yep, let me join you. Let's see. I haven't received any questions yet. We'll see if they come in. Can I hazard one, maybe? I'll direct it to Carolien at first, but I think maybe Raphaël, you can jump in after. I was wondering if you would talk a bit more about that meeting with your butcher, because it seems to be a turning point in the project. And I can't help myself looking at the students at the school, or even myself. We meet people every day, and there's a casual relationship with them. We know there's an expertise there, but we don't delve into it, and we rarely have a chance of getting to know people that deeply. I wonder what happened the day that instead of just ordering your sausages, you said, have you ever thought about this? And the whole, it's such a beautiful way of starting a project, because you say you read a lot and you research a lot, but it seems from the outside that moment where you reached out to that person as a designer, not as a client, but as a designer, and said, what do you think about that? That person could have thought you're completely crazy, and that would have been the end of it, right? But somehow there was a meeting there. I'd be very curious to find out more about that.
Yeah, it's so funny that you're saying that, because it's true. So I decided that I will not, I will collaborate when it's not my expertise. I'm not a graphic designer. I'm not a photographer. I'm not a butcher. So why should I try to make these things myself when I need to just collaborate? And I asked many butchers, and none of them were interested to start this project. And then I went actually to a village where I grew up. So I knew this guy, so he was a little bit more eager to say yes. And the funny thing is, we have learned so much from each other, but also he's still making these type of sausages. But the first time I asked him if he would make me a prototype, I said, can you make like a braadworst, like normal grill sausage, and then add about 50% of vegetable purees. So I made him a little drawing, like very schematic, meat, vegetables. So I got pictures back, and you wouldn't believe it. He had jellified vegetables and placed them inside the casing with meat, because that was my drawing. But I made just a little sketch, but I didn't think of how he would take it. And he took it so literal. So he had worked the whole Sunday on jellifying all this. It was a disaster. And that's when I realized, okay, I need to go there now, and we need to work together. because now we make the same bratwurst, and he makes them in many varieties, just with meat and vegetable puree in the same machine, extruded, super simple. Because I realized that if it is even a tiny bit more complex than making the normal sausage as they were doing before, a butcher will never change, because it's a running system. They work from Monday to Sunday, producing various things without any stop. So yeah, I learned it was essential to work with them.
But you knew that, so obviously it wasn't the first butcher. You needed to have a personal relationship to get, but what really I find very inspiring, and a lesson that I'm going to try to keep for myself, is that you have to persevere with that, because you didn't just turn into yourself and try to figure it out. You knew you needed that, and you had the confidence that it was a good enough idea. You needed to find the right collaborator in order to do that. So I find that is quite an inspiration. Raphaël, have you had people that were important to you in the same way in your practice?
What I wanted to say is that having a butcher friend is always something nice. With my brother, we used to carve half a pork with a butcher's friend who just wanted to show us how you do it, and I never imagined that I would carve half a pork by myself. I mean, he was there to help, but yeah, this is something that we've made together because we knew him. And I would add that when I bought Carolien's book, with my friend Bartek, who is my partner in crime in sausage making, we decided to make sausages in which we would replace a part of the meat protein by vegetables. In our case, it was a classic fennel Italian sausage. And we decided to add some rapinis, which is like a classic pairing of fennel sausage and rapini. And it turned out so great. But the other thing that we decided to do is that instead of grinding the meat through a meat grinder, which most of the sausages are, the way most of the sausages are made, I was thinking of my father, who is, every time he's talking about sausages, he's always saying, oh, back in the days, we had sausages with these really huge pieces of meat inside them. So actually, we decided to use knife cut meat instead of grinded meat. And seriously, these are one of the best sausages I had. And it's almost impossible to buy today knife cut sausages because it takes too long, and butchers would have to sell them at the prices that people would not buy actually. But doing it yourself allows you to experiment and do these kind of things.
Yeah. What's funny is that my brain is already thinking how to optimize it, because we made a heart sausage, so a sausage with pieces of heart, because I asked all the butchers that I talked to, what is your favorite cut of meat? And I think about 80% said heart, because
Really?
it's muscle. Yeah, it's super lean. It's cheap as hell because nobody sells it. And I thought, okay, I need to use it. But first time we ground it in, and it became a little bit too irony, because it was too not enough fat. And then we cut them only the heart chunky and kept the rest ground by the meat grinder. And it was really, the texture was really amazing, really nice.
Wow.
If I can jump in with some questions that we've received. There's a question again for Carolien, which you spoke of the butcher and that relationship that you have with them, but Miriam is interested in the people who produce the food. Do you go to the source and to the producers as well? Is that part of your project as well? What's the relationship you have there?
yeah, often I try to do that, and often I try to find a way to use the waste from a production line. So you have, of course, a lot of vegetables that are not pretty enough to enter the supermarkets, and they actually quite often end into the restaurant stream, where you can buy them really cheap for soups and things. But I try to optimize through there, and yeah, almost always I go to the source, because if there is already something to do from the moment, it's even the seed. Well, often you cannot, we all know that with Monsanto you cannot choose every seed, but even from that moment on, you have to think about how much water does it use? Can it resist a lot of pests? Does it need a lot of pesticides? Is it growing continuously? Is it like deneutralizing the soil? Do you need to stop after 1 year of growing? There are so many things that start before you plant what you're gonna eat. And yeah, I try to involve the whole stream.
That, for me, that goes back to what Raphaël was saying about when he was doing projects, that the more you do research, the deeper you go and the solutions appear. But that is that curiosity. Again, you were saying, Caroline, that, you know, we were talking about seaweed, and you said, oh, I read a book and it had all this, but you read the book as a designer, as someone which was carrying on her back this project, which is there. And I get the same feeling from Raphaël as a designer, that the projects that you both do build yourself. You create these projects, but as persons, you grow through these things. And I find that incredibly inspiring. Do you get a sense that each project you take on brings you to the next one and has a growth somehow, and not it's the opposite of dwindling a resource? It's building it up somehow as a career. That's the feeling I get, and what I find so inspiration from both of your practices.
Yeah, I can go first. Like, yes, and the thing is, what is so amazing is that when you I was trying to listen to what Raphaël was saying, but the French was here and there a little bit too complex to get the proper nuances. But in my job, what I did is I found myself a field, and I'm trying to become an expert on certain topics. But to become a true expert, you need to have a little bit of time. So that's why I'm focusing a lot of projects on the same topic. Rather than trying to diversify in many different topics, I try to steer. So now I'm really into the seaweed thing, sea vegetables, leafy products that this planet have.
At least you start with a basic knowledge that you'll enhance
exactly
on that new project, and eventually it just gets bigger and bigger. And
yeah, do you do the same? Do you use your knowledge that you gain?
Well, of course, and maybe sometimes in a conscious way, sometimes in an unconscious way, I guess. I mean, yeah, I really have a book design expertise, and this is definitely something that I'm doing while I'm conscious of it, in terms of the way a book is fabricated and all this mechanical aspect of the work. But then well, I guess that there's something that is more, I mean, I keep saying that there's a part when I'm working on a book project, there's a part where the subject calls for a certain form or aspect of the book that I can't totally explain in the way I've been doing, like this transition, or yeah, I mean, there's a part that is maybe more rational. I can say, okay, let's make this book this way because this is a way to refer to the subject, or but there's a part of it that I can't explain.
Intuition.
Yeah. So it's I mean, it's a work that is, I think, a good mix of rationality and intuition. And I mean, yeah, we should let intuition a part in our process, I guess.
Maybe one last question before we close that. We could probably go on. Again, specific to, we'll go back to food and to Carolien. Amandine asks, of course, you experiment with sort of ethical ways of creating food. She's wondering, do you look into food that keeps for longer too? Obviously, was that one of the attractions to sausage, but this idea that you prevent waste by having things that last longer, is that something that's part of what you're interested in?
Yeah, for sure. Just the thing is that with fermentation and preservation, they of course they started to exist before we had refrigeration. And they're very old, and basically it works in a certain way, and it will always work in a certain way. Mm-hmm. And I have a lot of respect for these procedures, but I don't want to touch them too much. Like fermentation, it's what it is. It's fantastic flavor maker and preservative. But there's not cheese. I would love to do something with cheese. And I looked into it and then I thought, no, it's perfect.
We have a sausage maker here in Montreal who specializes in making sausages, handmade sausages with cheese in it, with different types of. So maybe we'll have to invite you there and see what you think about those in the near future.
It sounds illegal.
Okay, so let's see. Oh, I'm sorry, I that wasn't what I meant to do. Let's see there. We'll see if we can all be around the same. Okay, there we go. We're all three of us here. So maybe we'll close the session around this. Raphaël, do you have anything you want to add towards the end, or is that?
I just want to thank Carolien for, I mean, I was so happy to be able to have this conversation with you. Seriously, thank you very much.
So thank you so much, Raphaël and Carolien, for this amazing discussion that we've had. Thank you to our audience as well, for people who have joined us. I want to thank my colleagues who made this, obviously the School of l'École de Design de l'UQAM. Maybe I'll switch to French. Remercier l'École de Design, bien sûr, qui a supporté ce projet-là, en particulier mes collègues Amandine, Alessandra et Guillaume Sasseville, qui sont vraiment un support indéfectible dans ce projet-là. À vous qui nous écoutez par Zoom, bien, merci d'avoir été là. Je vous invite d'aller voir sur le site de l'école. La prochaine conférence sera Francis et Amélie de l'atelier 3/4 phare qui vont venir vous rencontrer pour parler de leur collaboration. Donc, encore une fois, merci Raphaël, Carolien, de ce beau privilège de vous rencontrer. J'espère que ça réussit et j'en suis certain à nous inspirer à aller peut-être en profondeur quand on fait des choses et s'abandonner à ça qui peut nous paraître naturel, mais des fois une contre-indication parce qu'on manque de temps. Mais vous avez démontré qu'il faut le prendre, ce temps-là, parce que ça donne des résultats comme des pratiques que vous avez développées. Donc, merci infiniment. Et avec cela, je vous souhaite une bonne soirée.
Merci.
Bientôt.